Hi, and welcome to part 4 of my Enterprise Refit build. In this video, we're going to have a look at B deck and some of C deck. These two decks represent the administrative and diplomatic area of the ship. And you'll notice that I've also included a dry dock now, and this is because I want to recreate the scenes that we see in Star Trek the Motion Picture and The Wrath of Khan, where the crew are in a travel pod having a tour of the outside of the ship. And I think this is a great introduction to exploring the ship yourself in VR. So if we go over to the docking port on the back of the bridge, I haven't added much to the bridge since my last video, but what I have done is I've added the maintenance hatch for the computer room, which sits immediately below the helm and navigation controls, and this also serves as an emergency escape route should the turbolifts fail for any reason. And at some point I'll get around to moving these two cables as well, so they just go around the outside of the hatch. So if we climb down the ladder onto B deck, this ladder actually goes all the way down to the bottom of the saucer, and you'll see there's a similar room down below. And that's because each deck has its own copy of this room, so it has its own computer core and its own EPS management system. And if you look up at the ceiling there, you can see the various blue EPS conduits and yellow data cables, which connect back to the individual bridge modules. And if we follow those cables around, they all converge here at this EPS manifold. And the actual EPS or plasma manifold hardware is contained within this cabinet. And I think in the long run I might make it a lot bigger and have the hardware itself more exposed. But the purpose of this hardware is to take the main plasma feed from the intermix core and separate that feed into all the individual EPS conduits, which then transfer the electroplasma up and to the various bridge stations above, which require that power. So in this instance we have 10 separate conduits, and each one of these corresponds to one of the individual bridge stations. So for example, we might have main view screen, tactical, helm control, and so on. And each of the feeds can be managed independently using this control panel here. So you'll have various readouts such as plasma flow, phase variance, the integrity of the magnetic field, and so on. And each deck on the ship will have one or more plasma manifolds depending on requirements. And the reasoning behind this is to provide resiliency in the system. So should one deck take a particularly severe torpedo impact, for example, the systems on that deck could be knocked out, but the other decks will remain unaffected. And similarly, there are two main plasma feeds coming from the intermix core, which again provides additional resiliency in the system. The control room itself is a secure area, and there's a single door on either side of the room, and these are restricted to authorized crew members only. And the room itself is in a reinforced structure within the center of the saucer. So we've got additional bracing all around this particular room. And you can see here how the computer core is actually in a cylindrical structure. So once the bridge is removed, the entire core can be slid out and replaced, maintained, upgraded, whatever is needed. You may also notice that the structure of the bridge module is sat on top of the structure of B deck, and above the corridor out there will be large clamps holding the bridge dome into place, and they can actually be released and the bridge dome removed. And I'm hoping that there will be controls where that can happen live within VR, so you can actually watch the bridge being removed, and maybe even the computer core being slid out as well. So if we head on down to C deck, and we'll take the ladder for this. And one of the reasons I've got this ladder here is that with this particular room being the central management hub for both the power and data systems, if you wanted to drop down to the deck below, you'd have to exit the room, go all the way around to the turbo lift, get in the lift, or perhaps even have to wait for a lift. And the whole thing would be a lot quicker if you could just hop down the ladder. although I do need to add some railings or something, because it's a bit of a health and safety hazard at the moment. So, hopping down to C deck, you'll see that we have a very similar room. So we have the same computer core, and around here we've got another EPS manifold. And here you can see two of the EPS trunk cables coming down from the floor above, and these go all the way down through the core of the saucer. And you can see here I've been experimenting with different ways of getting the data connectivity through to the computer core. I think I'm going to abandon this idea in favor of one where they just go straight through the holes in the girders into the computer there, and I'll have a grid or a mesh or something that can be removed to maintain the cables. And if we take a look down through the hole, in fact if we teleport down through there and have a look, just head on across here. This is now D deck that we're on. You can see that the turbo lift goes down a vertical column there, and on each deck we've got the head of the computer core and also the EPS conduits going through all the EPS manifolds with the data connectivity going across into the computer. And all the other cabling will be running underneath the floor. So these girders here will have holes in them, and all the cabling will be coming laterally across, either into the computer core or connecting up to the EPS hardware. Okay, if we head back up to C deck through the floor and head out this doorway. And to my left there is the turbo lift. But if we go on across here to the right, if we continue on round, it takes us to the other side of the computer room and again back to the turbo lift. And if we go out of this radial corridor here, this is the outer corridor which goes around the entire circumference of C deck. And this will be the area where all the VIP or staterooms are placed, and there's actually 6 on either side of the deck. And the doors to those will be in this wall here. And on the other wall over here, we'll have 3 separate phaser control rooms for the phaser turrets that are actually on the surface of the outer hull of C deck. So moving on down, I haven't put in any of the doors yet for those. We should be coming up to the turbo lift again. Here we are. So I've modelled this corridor and the turbo lift doors and what we see in the Wrath of Khan. So you see McCoy standing there as Kirk goes off to his quarters. And I've also been just experimenting with the doors. So you've got the horizontal doors for the corridor and the curved doors, which are part of the turbo car within the turbo shaft. These don't move yet, but hopefully they soon will. You don't actually see 2 sets of doors in either the TV series or the films, at least not as far as I've seen. But it seems to make sense that you would have 2 sets of doors which open in unison. So we hop up to B deck. I've moved a lot of the rooms around on B deck, and so the door here has moved slightly to the left, and I've done this to allow me to put a small kitchen area here, and it also makes the windows in a better position for the dining area. So here will be tables and chairs and things, and there'll be a bathroom at the back there, and that's a corridor that leads through to the lounge. But we'll come back to this room in a bit. So if we carry on around the corridor, past the computer room, this takes us into conference room 1. And again, the reason I moved everything around was to also line up the conference rooms with the outer windows, which, if we just hop over here, are in a pretty good position, and you can see the dry dock outside. And I've also redone the ceilings on B deck so that they better represent the curvature of the outer hull. And you can see the groove there that runs all around the outside of the teardrop shape as well. and I thought it would also be nice to add the UFP logo. It's the 2260s and 2270s version of the logo. I actually prefer the one that's in next gen, but I thought for consistency reasons I'll have to stick with that one. Moving on down the corridor. We've got a generic office here, which I did intend to be the captain's ready room, despite Kirk's apparent preference for not using one. And here we have conference room 2. It's the same layout as the first conference room, just without the windows. This is the front of the teardrop shape, where there aren't any windows on the studio model, so I couldn't include those. And here we have just another generic office. This would be the XO's office, perhaps. And finally, conference room 3. So this is on the other side of the teardrop now, where again we do have some windows on the outer hull. And moving on past the other side of the computer room, turbo lift door there, and this is the bar. I had every intention of building the bar to be exactly the same as we see in Star Trek the Motion Picture, and indeed the bar itself is the same as what we see on screen. But in the film, the bar is actually against that wall there with a cabinet behind with some bottles and things in it. But in practice, because of the shape of the outer hull and the height of the ceiling, it just wouldn't fit. It didn't matter which way I angled it. It was just a really awkward space. So the compromise I reached was to move it across to the other side. And this actually works quite well. So it's a good amount of space behind the bar, and there's more than enough room for plenty of bottles and glasses and things. And on that note, these glasses are all interactive objects, and I've actually been messing around with making glass materials in Unreal Engine. It looks great if you hold it up to the light, but for some reason it completely vanishes if you hold it against a dark background. So if anyone out there has a lot of experience with Unreal Engine, I'd love to know why. And the rest of this room is just going to be tables and chairs and things, and I'll make it look a little bit more comfortable as well. And again, I'm quite happy with the way the windows have turned out. I'm 6 foot tall, and they're a perfect height for me. Okay, moving on down to the lounge. This is my favourite room so far, and it's certainly the room that I've spent the most time on. I've tried to model it as closely as possible after what we see in Star Trek the Motion Picture, but you'll notice that aesthetically, I've tried to bring it more in line with what we see in The Wrath of Khan. Kirk's quarters in The Wrath of Khan are certainly a lot more luxurious, and I've gone with the same gold-edged wooden panels and slightly more luxury yacht-like stylings. Though I think I may have overdone it slightly on the luxury. I may tone this back a little bit so it's slightly less luxury yachts and more like what we see in Kirk's quarters. Just so we get our bearings, if I stand over here, this is the camera angle you see in the motion picture, where you've got McCoy standing over there and Spock entering through the doorway. And in the film, there are these 2 large square windows, and that's actually a redress of the rec deck set. I'm not quite sure why. I imagine it's probably either time constraints or budgetary reasons. But the original plan, as drawn up by Andrew Probert, had this as an open plan lounge, which is what I've actually gone with here. I did originally have the wall with the 2 windows, but because of the size, if I go over it, have a look, you'll see because of where the outer hull is located, and the lack of room on either side of the lounge, there wasn't enough room for any kind of corridor, and even less so on the other side because of the planter. So I had no choice really but to lose that wall and go with the open plan design. And on the whole, I think I prefer the open plan design anyway. It really opens the lounge up. So we have a look down here. The lower section of the lounge is supposed to follow the contour of the outer hull, So as the hull comes up and around, it's supposed to flow gently underneath this deck. There wasn't quite enough room to do that, so to this area is sunken very slightly into sea deck, but it's behind the corridor, so it's not actually in any usable space anyway. So in actual fact, it's worked out quite well. And of course, with this being VR, everything is in fact interactive, so you can pick up the cushions, rearrange them, grab drinks. There's no windows yet, so you can just throw them out there. And if we hop up here, you can also move the tables around, just rearrange the furniture a bit. And I wanted to make a note of those black panels there at the back. In the movie, I think they are just shiny black panels, but that area is slightly set forward to the rest of the lounge. So I thought it would be a really good idea to actually turn that into a corridor. So if we walk on round, rather than just shiny black panels, I've made them into kind of just darkened glass windows, which I think works really well. And it allows you to get to the other side of the B deck into what will be the dining area. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be the bathroom. So I imagine I'll have toilets and things there, a sink over here. Something that's worth noting is that if we were going with the studio model in terms of the window placement, that particular window there was actually here. And I thought it would be a little bit weird having a window in the bathroom. So that's why I've moved it over there just a little bit. It's not too noticeable on the outside. And I've actually done the same on the other side as well, so that they match. And again, had I left the windows in their studio model position, then the window would have been right here in front of us, where in the motion picture, when the camera's over here, there's certainly no window visible in the shot. So for a couple of reasons, it just made sense to break my own rules slightly and move one of the features that's on the outer hull. So I guess the last thing to do is to sit down in the lounge. So this is one of my favourite spots. Let's just sit down in a chair here, put my legs up, and look at the fantastic view. This is actually a really comfortable space to be sat in. And one of the things I intend to do is to turn this into a virtual environment on something called Big Screen Beta, which is a Vive app which allows you to have like a big virtual PC screen in a virtual 3D environment. I think it would be nice to just sit down on this sofa, kind of just using your PC as normal, just on a huge screen in the Enterprise Lounge. So thanks again for watching, and a special thanks to everyone that's subscribed over the past few videos. I'm hoping that the next video will be out a lot sooner than this one. I've just been having a few problems with Unreal Engine, getting the lighting to work. I'm finding that having dynamic lighting all over the place is really causing some performance issues. So hopefully in the next video, everything's going to have proper static baked lighting, which should make it look a lot nicer as well. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio! And these two decks represent the diplomatic and administrative... oh! And also the one in Wrath of Khan, where the crew go on... Oh my god! This ladder goes all the way down. Ouch. I just walked into the wall. And each deck on the ship will have one or more EPS manifolds, depending on requirements. And the reasoning behind that is to provide resiliency... nearly got it out. Okay, so Enterprise Golf. Ooh. Oh. Oh. Yay. Okay, let's see if I can hit an cell. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Oh, I let go of the club.